Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss Chokher Bali, and we are going to trace a journey from Tagore to Rituparna Ghosh. Chokher Bali, translated in English as A Grain of Sand in the Eye, was published in 1903, and there is no doubt that Rabindranath, a crusader for women's emancipation, had moved steps ahead of Bankim Chandra, because we know that Bankim Chandra's Bishobrikho, translated in English as The Poison Tree, published in 1873, has an erring yet impassive widow named Kunda Nandini, and she has to swallow poison as a price for flouting a social order she fails to fit in. Bankim Chandra allows her to voice her desire for Nagendra only after we are sure of her imminent death. Binodini in Chokher Bali, the exquisite combination of beauty, passion, brains, education, and power of communication, is far more attractive and appealing to men who struggle hard to retain their superiority in her presence. She is far more daring in voicing her desires and choices than Charulata, the central character of Tagore's novella Noshtonir, translated as The Broken Nest, published in 1901. However, there is a definite movement from within to without in Tagore's 1915 novel Ghore Baire, translated as Home and the World. Ghore Baire explores the eventualities of bringing the modern Bengali woman into the drawing room. I am reading out a comment by Rosinka Chaudhary, and the book that I have selected is Freedom and Beef Sticks, and there she writes, when Ghore Baire appeared, while Bimala's excursion into the public space of the drawing room ends in unmitigated disaster in the novel itself, the principle whereby women were to be encouraged to take up their legitimate role in the dichotomous space of the drawing room was somewhat tenuously in the process of being established. Nikhilesh, the wealthy and enlightened husband of Bimala, allows the latter to make space for herself in the drawing room frequented by his friend Shondeep. But this journey of Bimala from the inner quarters to the outer ends in the destruction of her household. The novel culminates in Bimala's remorse and widowhood. Charulata's intimacy with Amol leads to a less extreme but similar result. Her nest is broken. Binodini too fails to live up to the expectations of the 21st century feminist reader at the end, when she decides to accompany Annapurna to Kashi. prepared to lead the austere life of a penitent widow. At the most, she can receive the compassion and forgiveness of the privileged mistress of the house that had once been her refuge. I quote from the translation of the novel, A Grain of Sand, Chokher Bari, 2003 edition. Asha's heart swelled with tears, and she found herself pitying Binodini too. There were few hearts hard enough to be incapable of forgiving the one who is taking leave forever. Asha was sure Binodini loved Mohendro, and why wouldn't she? Asha knew from her own heart just how inevitable it was to feel love for Mohendro. It was the anguish of this love that made her feel compassion for Binodini now. We may be amused by Asha's ignorance of the fact that Binodini craves for Bihari and not Mohendro. But that doesn't in any way elevate Binodini's stature. She repels Mohendro's advances, retains her chastity with all her might, waiting all the while for the man to whom she had surrendered her body and mind, only to back out at the last moment, fearing social stigma. I quote from the novel once again. For pity's sake, you cannot marry a widow. Your generosity may have room for anything. But if I do this and ruin your name in society, I shall not be able to hold up my head for the rest of my life. Whether Rabindranath is a proto-feminist, consciously expressing his views in favor of widow remarriage and narrating a tale of deprivation and misery of the widows of his society in an attempt to draw public support and sympathy in their favor, is an issue that remains unresolved. In his author's note to the 1940 edition of this novel, however, Tagore refrains from addressing this issue and focuses on the idiosyncrasy of Rajlokhi that triggers a chain of events. I quote from the introduction. In Chokher Bali, it is a mother's envy that provides the vital thrust to the story. It is the situation that results from the envy that brings out Mohendro's illicit and undesirable propensities in a way in which they would never have been exposed in normal circumstances. It is as if the door to a bestial cage was thrown open and the vicious events that were contained within tumbled out unrestrained. Modern literature is not merely about describing the sequence of events, but also about analyzing them and drawing out their inner meaning. It is this method that is employed in Chokher Bali. The facts that Rajlokhi's envy has its roots in the deprivation of widowhood and that her situation in life demands an empathetic understanding rather than a mechanical reprimand remain beyond the scope of this brief explanation. Ironically, the 21st century reader possibly regards the throwing open of the bestial cage or the tumbling out of the apparently vicious events a blessing in disguise, for they expose bitter truths that remain concealed under hypocritical facades in so-called normal circumstances. The innate feelings of insecurity in Rajlokhi, the turbulent storm of unfulfilled desires that rages within the soul of Binodini, the cowardly self-love of Mohendro, along with his shallow infatuation towards Ashalata, and the precariously vulnerable state of an illiterate young wife in an inflexible, conservative, patriarchal society stare at our face blatantly. The characters evolve, confront, and try to rectify their weaknesses. But while Mohendro is given a hero's welcome on returning home by his dying mother, and Ashalata considers herself the most blessed woman alive to get back her husband's attention, Binodini has to pay the price of her transgression by surrendering her rebellious spirit to the dictates of a rigid society. There is where Rabindranath Tagore had stopped in 1903, and after a span of almost 100 years, we see the exceptionally gifted filmmaker of Bengal, Rituparna Ghosh, come out with an adaptation of the novel in his award-winning film Chokher Bali, a passion play, thereby articulating a 21st century response to a situation etched in the original novel and moving beyond it in many ways. In Tagore's original text, we do not find specific reference to contemporary socio-political developments. Ghosh adds a new dimension to the film, almost forces the viewer to look beyond the particular into certain wider areas of concern by giving the film a periodic flavor. The specific mention of the law that abolished sati and the Widow Remarriage Act of 1856, the focus on the plight of widows in Kashi, illiteracy of women, bring in issues that are strikingly absent in the original novel. Srimati Mukherjee, in her essay Chokher Bali, a historico-cultural translation of Tagore, argues that Ghosh pushes the boundaries of traditional portrayals of Indian widows and thereby tries to bridge the gulf between an early 20th century representation of a situation and a 21st century audience. Despite being periodic, the film shows the daring to break the rigid shackles of tradition that succeeded in holding back even Tagore to some extent. I quote from Srimati Mukherjee's article. Even in a novel published in 1901-1902, Tagore depicts Binodini not as a widow accepting her fate, but as an intermittently angry, resentful one who interrogates all the injustices that mar her life. However, Ghosh clearly adds more to his cinematic representation of Binodini's character. Some features of this representation that stand out prominently, particularly for a Bengali audience familiar with Tagore's Chokher Bali, are her receptivity to physical passion, her willingness to help other widows partake of pleasures that were taboo, such as drinking tea, and her unhesitating use of her widowhood to further her own ends. In reactivating Binodini's character, not only in ways divergent from Tagore's novel, but with elements of agency that hopefully are more acceptable to an early 21st century global audience familiar with struggles for women's rights, Ghosh participates in the liquidation of the value of tradition in the cultural heritage. If we ignore the issue of acceptability of the film to the 21st century global audience for a while, we are bound to be concerned with the question of possibility. Is Ghosh's Binodini an authentic representation of the late 19th century Bengali Brahmin widow? Or is she a product of the director's wishful thinking? Is this film with a periodic flavor true to the ethos of its socio-historical backdrop that cannot be ignored? While Tagore avoids a direct plunge into the specifics of his age, he remains loyal to a way of living and thinking that defines his times. His novel can in no way be regarded as historical. On the other hand, Ghosh's adaptation uses Tagore's novel as a means to an end that projects the best possible response of Binodini to the circumstances of her life. He keeps the framework intact and changes only the response, the focus being on what should have been than on what could have been. He too suffers the restrictions imposed by a periodic piece. He cannot allow Binodini to wear a red sari along with a red shawl, or to wear jewellery in full public gaze, or marry Bihari without a second thought, or perhaps bear Mohendro's child. However, the 21st century reader is far more disturbed by Binodini's response to her situation as Tagore presents it. The feminist reader shares the suffocating helplessness of Binodini, and the sense of waste of beauty, passion and intellect is intensely agonizing. Ghosh allows a catharsis that Tagore denies, maybe because Tagore's concern is not the plight of a widow, but the patterns of human relationships, complicated by envy and possessive instinct. Satyajit Roy, while making Charulata, a film based on Tagore's novella Noshtonir, seems a bit more guarded in his approach. I quote from Suranjan Ganguly's book, Satyajit Roy in Search of the Modern. He writes, Roy's highly understated visual style seems perfectly compatible with the understated world of marginalized women in the 19th century. Charu's attraction for Amol is conveyed almost entirely through glances, gestures, and subtlest of nuances that even she misses out on. Now let us focus on the specific inputs that stand out in the film adaptation of Chokhe Pali. Early in the film, we meet a Mem Sahib who comes to offer free education to girls but is turned away. We hear Binodini speak English in the presence of an awestruck Ashalata, who very soon infers the cause of Binodini's widowhood. Ashalata has been brainwashed by Annapurna to believe that any woman who attempts to pursue education is bound to become a widow. That's a punishment a woman suffers for transgression. We have already met Binodini's English teacher in the village, heard her reading out several times the amorous letter in English describing the carnal passion of Mohendro for Ashalata, and seen her consuming a chocolate secretly. Binodini can initiate the gaze of others instead of being a mere passive object of gaze with no choice of her own, just as she can be an invisible subject of the gaze with her pair of binoculars. In the former case, Binodini enjoys being gazed at, while in the latter situation it is she who regulates the focus of her binoculars. Even without the binoculars, Binodini can be no less daring and voyeuristic as a gazer, of whether that be of her own image in the mirror or the muscular body of Bihari drenched in the water of the lotus pond on the day of the picnic. On the occasion of Ashalata's first marriage anniversary, she displays her body to a stunned Ashalata while showing her how to put on the red blouse that her husband had gifted her. The color red is used as a motif in the film. While the married women participate in the rituals of using alta, a red liquid married women use to decorate their feet, and playing with sindoor on the last day of Durga Puja festivities, the widows are required to follow the austere rigors of Ambubachi that requires widows to subsist on fruits and milk for 4 days. When Ashalata offers Binodini a new than, a white borderless sari worn by widows, she sardonically comments that a new and an old than are all the same to her. Ghosh's Binodini never hesitates to speak through her body, to express her envy, desire, anger and vengeful thoughts. The doctor's wife who bandages Binodini's injured finger initially mistakes her to be one of the many widows in trouble who come to her for abortions. Then comes the second motif of the jewellery box, the symbol of woman's natural craving for the material or the physical pleasures of life, and also her enslavement to patriarchy. A woman adorns herself with jewellery only to please her master, with whose indifference perishes the value of the ornaments. Binodini wears the ornaments to draw a few words of appreciation from Mohendro and later to attempt to seduce Bihari into agreeing to marry her. Just as Ashalata decks herself with gold from tip to toe every night to attract her husband's attention. Society has labelled Binodini as a widow, a mem sahib and a young woman, ignoring the fact, as Binodini reminds us, that she is first and foremost a human being of flesh and blood, with a natural yearning to live a complete and fulfilling life. On 3 occasions of physical proximity with Mohendro, Binodini mentions her dead husband, or rather a metaphoric representation of a dead husband, a metaphoric death in life, a spectre which she rejuvenates deliberately. On the first occasion to test the courage of Mohendro, when she lies to him that her husband had died of tuberculosis. On the second occasion to enjoy a few moments of privacy with Mohendro in a carriage by duping Ashalata into believing that she is going to Kalighat to pray for her husband's soul on his death anniversary. And finally, as a shield of protection, when Mohendro, on the occasion of his visit to her native village home, is told that he is sitting on her marriage bed, incidentally also the deathbed of her husband. We find Binodini attempting suicide, but failing to ignore the beacon of life. Just as the camera focuses on the greedy stare of a young widow in the ashram of Kashi as she watches Annapurna frying fish for pregnant Ashalata, and on widows of Kashi either roaming on the streets half deranged begging for alms or waiting for death, lying in the cold on the ghats of the Ganges. In the film, unlike the novel, Rajlokhi dies a lonely death with only Bihari by her side, requesting him to feed poor widows in her Shraddha ceremony, a memorial service held a few days after the funeral of a Hindu. She puts forward a reason that sums up the state of Hindu widows and conveys a hard-hitting message that generates both pathos and rebellious thoughts of sheer anger. Rajlokhi, through this gesture, reaches out to women of her kind and voices a protest of a unique kind. She is not detracting even an inch from truth or being swayed by impulse when, in the last moments of her life, she sums up her response to the treatment meted out to the widows in this society by saying that crows, jackals, trees and cattle are far more privileged in this society than the widows who stagnate in a living dead state in an abyss of nothingness. Ghosh's Rajlokhi is far less a tool of patriarchy than Tagore's. Her reaching out to Ashalata is far more empathetic and selfless compared to the concern shown by her counterpart in Tagore's novel, where in the later half the daughter-in-law's importance in the household depends on her ability of saving Mohendro from the clutches of Binodini. Red becomes a color of mutiny when we see Binodini wearing a red shawl and later covering the body of the dying widow with it. As the director explains, this is from an interview taken by Kaustubh Bakshi. The rebellion, says Rituparna Ghosh, she puts up, is symbolized by the repetitive use of the color red. Red is not just the color of passion, it is also the color of revolt in Chokher Bali. Srimati Ghosh provides an enlightening interpretation of the use of the red shawl in the film. She writes, When Bihari finally proposes marriage to Binodini, the background of the scene is intermittently lit up by funeral pyres, one of which happens to be that of the widow whose death Binodini has recently witnessed. This is evident to the viewer because the red shawl that had covered the body of the dying widow is now worn by another widow who limps around the funeral pyre, possibly in hope of getting exactly such discarded items before the body is set on fire. The Indian viewer understands that the red shawl is used in both cases only for purposes of providing warmth. It is not appropriate, it is not an appropriate attire for the Hindu widow. It is supremely ironic that Binodini had previously in Kashi asked Mohendro if he would buy her a red shawl that she liked. Mohendro expressed his disapproval, red being associated with brides in the Hindu context and white with widows. Ghosh signifies the utter futility of such desire as Binodini's by using a red shawl to cover the body of an unconscious widow about to exit life, or by transferring it to the body of another aged widow whose existence seems to revolve around seeking disposable goods around funeral pyres. No more an object of desire, the red shawl finally figures as shroud for bodies marked by deprivation. This was Srimati Mukherjee. Binodini in Ghosh's film does not leave for Kashi. Rather, she leaves Kashi for an undisclosed destination, leaving Bihari standing in the midst of a deserted boat with the red sari and sindoor he had brought for her. Binodini leaves behind her pair of binoculars and a letter addressed to Ashalata. The binocular motif strikes the keynote of the film. Charulata in Satyajit Roy's adaptation of Tagore's Noshtonir toys with a similar pair of binoculars to cope up with the anguish of loneliness and boredom. I once again quote from Suranjan Ganguly's book. Training her glasses on the world outside, Charu does not wish merely to satisfy her curiosity, but wants her gaze returned, be noticed, achieve contact. But even in close-up, the world remains out of bounds. Its proximity only an optical illusion. It invites her to look, but maintains its separatedness as the other. Ghosh, however, uses the binoculars to help Binodini to push her boundaries and move from the particular to the universal, and then allows her to merge with the other without the aid of her field glasses. Hence, she leaves them on the table before setting out on that unrevealed destination. Initially, she uses them as a voyeuristic gazer to search for scenes of sexual intimacy between Mohendro and Ashalata in their bedroom. In Kashi, she gets a close view of a dying widow and then of pregnant Ashalata through them. We gradually notice a shift and a broadening of perspective that creates an initial phase of disturbance but changes Binodini from within. The letter she leaves behind explicates this change. I once again would like to quote from Srimati Mukherjee. Binodini, in this last letter to her Shoi, suggests to Ashalata that they should move beyond their sense of insults, sadness and deprivation that they both had felt, confined within the prescribed women's spaces of Dorjipara street. For if situated in their potentially separated countries, they focused on these, then they already had lost to Lord Curzon. If, however, they looked at the country within and stood by their pledge of eternal friendship to each other, it would be impossible for Lord Curzon to teach them a lesson. At the close of Chokher Bali then, Ghosh looks to the solidarity of women not only as a force against the stipulations and injustices of Hindu patriarchy, but as a shield against the divisive strategies of British colonialism in India. Binod concludes her letter pleading with Asha not to keep her child confined to the interiority of Dorjipara street, whether it be a boy or a girl. The last line of her letter translates, "You will see, she will teach you what country is." Now I conclude. The escape of Binodini carries no tinge of pathos or helpless self-sacrifice. In fact, it calls for celebration for Binodini, has been compensated at the end with an all-encompassing wholesome vision of harmony, understanding and enlightenment that moves beyond the limitations of gender and brings within its purview the entire country. Ashalata is given no scope to either pity or pardon her. She can only read her letter with mute admiration and hope to communicate with her in future. Thank you. See you soon.